Okay, ready to dive into something kind of amazing with me.
I'm always up for an adventure. What are we diving into?
Sacred listening.
Interesting. What made you think of that?
I got my hands on these workbooks by Future of Faith. Have you heard of them?
Yeah, they're all about transforming how we communicate. I've skimmed them some interesting stuff in there. What caught your eye?
It's the whole idea of sacred listening, like taking this everyday thing we do, listening, and turning it into something much deeper.
Right. They're not just talking about being better at cocktail parties, are they?
Definitely not. So I was flipping through these workbooks, and they're packed with exercises and stuff. But what really struck me is how they connect listening to this idea of encountering the divine in each person.
That's a powerful concept. It reminds me of that quote, to see the face of God in everyone.
Exactly. And when you approach a conversation with that in mind, it kind of changes everything, doesn't it? It's not just about waiting for your turn to talk anymore.
It becomes less about you and more about the other person. More about understanding.
Okay, so let's say I'm on board with this whole sacred listening thing. How do I actually do it? Because Future of Faith also lays out this whole process.
It's not just about showing up and hoping for the best, right?
Definitely not. There are 3 phases, and some of it really surprised me.
Like what?
Well, the first phase is all about setting intentions.
That makes sense. Creating the right space for meaningful conversation.
Right, but they take it a step further. Like, they even suggest incorporating rituals to kind of signal that this is different from just casual conversation.
Interesting. What kind of rituals?
It could be as simple as a moment of silence or reading a meaningful quote together. Just something to set the tone.
I like it. So we've set the mood. Now what?
Phase 2, and this is the one that threw me for a loop, is called Ask and Record.
Record. Are we talking about taking notes during a conversation?
Yep, you heard that right. Future of Faith actually recommends it. I know. It sounds a little strange at first.
I can see why you'd think that. But there's something to be said about really valuing someone's words enough to want to remember them, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, when you put it like that, it makes sense. It's like a physical manifestation of your attention, showing the other person that what they're saying matters. But taking notes aside, asking the right questions is key too, right?
Absolutely. That's where they talk about aligned inquiry. Basically asking open-ended questions that encourage people to open up.
So instead of, did you have a good day? It's more like, tell me about your day.
Exactly. It's about drawing people out, giving them the space to share what's really on their mind.
Okay, that makes sense. But here's my question. How do you actually come up with those questions? Especially when you're trying to have these deeper conversations in different settings, like with family, friends, even colleagues.
That's where Future of Faith really shines. Their workbooks are full of specific exercises designed for different relationships and contexts.
Oh, so it's less about reinventing the wheel and more about having the right tools for the job.
Exactly. And each exercise is carefully designed to help you uncover what really matters to the people in your life.
Okay, so less theory, more tools. I like it. Can you give me an example of one of these exercises that really stood out to you?
One that I found particularly insightful is called Mapping Trusted Relationships.
Mapping trusted relationships. Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
So, mapping trusted relationships, it's all about visually representing the different levels of trust we have with the people in our lives.
Okay, so we're talking actual maps, like should I grab a compass and a protractor?
Not quite that literal, but you will need some supplies. They suggest using note cards or sticky notes, each one representing someone you interact with regularly.
Got it. So if my neighbor Sarah is someone I only wave to in passing, I just write S on a card and call it a day.
Well, you're on the right track, but it gets more interesting. Once you have your initials, you start grouping them based on levels of trust. For those you confide in, maybe you draw a circle around their cards. And then for those you talk to about faith or spirituality, you add another shape, like a square, around the circle.
Wait, so if Sarah and I were closer, and I often vent to her about life, and we sometimes even go to church together, she'd be S inside a circle, inside a square.
You got it. And the visual just helps.
Yeah.
Because then Future of Faith hits you with some really insightful questions, like, what qualities do the people in my inner circle share? Or are there people on the periphery that I'd like to draw closer to?
Oh, those are good. And kind of convicting when you think about it. I bet for a lot of us, those inner circles would be smaller than we'd like to admit.
It's true. We often have these idealized versions of our relationships. But this exercise, it forces you to be honest with yourself about where you're really at.
And then what? Do you just stare at your sad little circles and squares?
Not at all. That's where the real work begins. The next step is to think about actionable steps. How can you nurture those existing inner circles, those relationships that you truly value?
So maybe schedule that coffee date with a friend you've been meaning to catch up with.
Exactly. Or maybe there's someone who's been on the periphery of your life, someone you sense a connection with. This exercise might give you the nudge to reach out, invite them in a little deeper.
It's like a roadmap for building more intentional relationships. But instead of streets and landmarks, it's all about levels of trust and vulnerability.
I like that. And the best part is, this is just one of many exercises Future of Faith provides. They have a whole toolbox full of them.
Oh, I bet. And they're not all about one-on-one connections either, right? Don't some of them focus on groups and communities?
You're right. And one that I found particularly powerful in that realm is called Building a Meaningful Ritual.
Building a meaningful ritual. Okay, now we're talking. I'm always up for trying new rituals, especially ones that actually, add meaning to life. What's Future of Faith's take on this?
Well, they definitely emphasize intentionality, but in a way that feels very grounded in our modern world.
Grounded how? Give me an example.
So this particular exercise, it encourages people to use technology as a tool for deepening their spiritual practice.
Hold on, technology? I thought we were trying to unplug and be more present, not glued to our screens.
That's the usual assumption, right?
Yeah.
But Future of Faith, they see technology as this double-edged sword. It can distract us, sure, but it can also be a powerful tool if used mindfully.
Okay, I'm listening. How so?
Think about all the apps out there designed to help us build healthy habits. Meditation apps, prayer prompts, even those that help you track gratitude.
Yeah, there are tons of them. I've tried a few myself.
Exactly. And Future of Faith, they see those apps as potential building blocks for creating meaningful rituals. It's about harnessing the power of technology for spiritual growth, rather than shying away from it.
So instead of thinking, oh, I have to carve out an hour for silent contemplation in a secluded forest, it's more like, hey, I can use this 5-minute break to listen to a guided meditation on my phone.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you, what fits into your life, and using those tools to create those little pockets of intentionality throughout your day.
I like it. It's about making those practices more accessible, less intimidating.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing is, Future of Faith doesn't prescribe a specific app or platform. It's about having groups explore what's out there, what resonates with them, and then creating a plan together.
So it could be a youth group trying out a prayer app together and then having a weekly online forum to share their experiences.
Exactly. Or a church community doing a virtual Bible study with a shared digital journal for reflections. The possibilities are endless, really.
That's amazing because it's not just, okay, go meditate for 20 minutes. Good luck with that. It's about building in that accountability, that sense of shared purpose, which I think is so crucial for making those practices stick.
Couldn't agree more. It's about creating a virtual sacred space, which, let's face it, is so important in a time when people's lives are so scattered and disconnected.
So true. It's like we're all craving that sense of connection, that feeling of belonging. And this idea of sacred listening, it seems like it extends far beyond just those one-on-one conversations.
Absolutely. And that's what I appreciate most about Future of Faith's approach. They provide tools and frameworks, but ultimately they empower you to take those ideas and run with them, to create the kind of communities and connections you long for.
It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in making the world a little less noisy, a little more intentional.
Exactly. It starts with a willingness to listen deeply, to really see the people around us, and to recognize the sacred in those everyday encounters.
And who knows what amazing transformations might unfold from there. That's a wrap on today's deep dive into sacred listening. Until next time, keep those conversations going, keep seeking connection, and keep listening for the sacred in the unexpected places.